Hello viewers, this is Devendra Kumar Gora, and in this video we will deal with a short biography of a nominated very famous feminist writer Virginia Woolf. English author Virginia Woolf wrote modernist classical including Mrs. Dalloway, To the Lighthouse, as well as pioneering feminist texts, A Room of One's Own, and Three Genius. She was born into a privileged English house in 1882. Author Virginia Woolf was brought up by free-thinking parents. She began writing as a young girl, published her first novel, The Way Out, in 1915, and she wrote modernist classicals including Virginia Woolf, Room of One's Own. In her personal life, she suffered bout of deep depression, and finally she ended her life by committing a suicide, drowning herself in a river in 1941 when she was only 59 years old. That was because of the mental illness. Let's come to her early life. She was born on 25th January 1822. Virginia Stephen was raised in a very remarkable household. Her father, Leslie Stephen, he was a very historian and good author, as well as one of the most prominent figure in the golden age of mountaineering. Virginia Woolf's mother, Julia Stephen, had been born in India, and later on she served as a model for several painters. She was a nurse and wrote a book on the profession. Both of her parents had been married, and they widowed before marrying each other. Woolf had 3 siblings and 4 half siblings. 8 children live under one roof of a very short place. 2 of her brothers had been educated at Cambridge University, but all the girls were taught at the home because the boys were considered the privileged one, and women were not allowed to get the education. Their right of education was denied in the beginning, as it was the attitude of the society of that time. Moreover, Virginia Woolf's parents were extremely very well connected socially, artistically, as they belonged to very good background. Her mother was a friend of William Thackeray, Macaulay Thackeray, the father of his first wife, who died unexpectedly, and number of them. From the time of her birth till 1895, Virginia actually spent her summers in St. Levan's, which is still standing today. In her later memories, Virginia Woolf recalled this particular place with a great fondness and enthusiasm. In fact, she incorporated scenes from those early summaries into the modern novel To the Lighthouse that was published in 1927. She was a very curious girl, light-hearted, very playful. She started a family newspaper entitled Parkgate News to document her family's humors and anecdotes. Also, she was very creative from her childhood, who had become the head of household 2 years later because of the mental breakdown of her mother. While dealing with the personal losses, Virginia continued her study in German, Greek, and Latin at the Ladies' Department of King's College London. Later on, after 4 years, She introduced her to a handful of radical feminists at the helm of educational reform. In 1904, her father also passed away, and after this great loss in 1905, she actually started writing professionally, and she is considered the pioneer of stream of consciousness technique that is used as a narrative device in the writings. She got married in 1912, and both the couples in the following year founded a press named Hogarth Press. She suffered the mental illness after the marriage, and finally, due to the mental illness and depression, she ended her up life by drowning herself in a river. So let us discuss her contribution in literature. Several years before marriage, she began writing on her first novel, whose original title was Malimborgia, but after 9 years it was released in 1915 as the another title, The Way Out. Here Virginia Woolf used the book to experiment with several literary tools, including compelling and using narrative perspectives, dream state, free association prose. Like this, she kept on experimenting with the writings. So a year after the end of World War I, she purchased Monk's House, a cottage in the village, in 1919, and the same year she published Night and Day. That was a novel that set in Edwardian England. Her third novel was Jacob's Room, that was published by her own press, Hogarth Press, in 1922, based on her brother Toby. It was considered a very significant departure from her earlier novels with its very modernistic elements. So although Virginia Woolf engages herself with the literary writing, and in continuation of that, in 1925 she received a rare review of her Mrs. Dalloway. That was her fourth novel. The mesmerizing story intervened interior monologue raised the issues of woman, basically feminism, mental illness, and the story homosexuality in post-World War I England. Mrs. Dalloway, that was adapted into film as well, and after that she published another novel, To the Lighthouse, in 1928. That was another great grand success and considered revolutionary for its the use of stream of consciousness technique in the narrative. The modernistic classics examines the subtext of human relationships through the lives of Ramsay family as they vacation on the Isles of Skye in Scotland. Now we come to the prose work. In 1929 she published A Room of One's Own. That was a very feministic essay based on her lecture she had delivered at Women's College, in which she examines the role of women in literature. In the work she sets forth the idea that a woman must have money and room for her own if she want to write a fiction. Otherwise that's not possible for her to write in that particular society where women are not supposed to publish their works. Either they publish their works with their pseudonym, otherwise they were not allowed to do so. And with the economic crisis, that is going to be very impossible. So Virginia Woolf pushed narrative boundaries in her next work, The Waves, 1931. She described a play poem that is written in the voice of 6 different characters. She published The Years, the final novel that was published in her lifetime in 1937, about the family's history over the course of the generation. Right, so throughout her career, Virginia Woolf spoke regularly at the college, universities. She wrote down number of letters, wrote moving essays, and she actually published her short stories in her own press. So by her mid 40s, she had established herself as a very good intellectual, a very prominent writer, and well-known popular feminist. Her husband was quite aware of the sign that pointed to his wife's descent into depression. He saw, as she was working on what would be her final manuscript between the act, that she was sinking into a very deep despair, and after that finally she committed a suicide by drowning herself into the river. Thank you very much. In the next session we will deal with the essay Profession of Woman, that is also a part of the lecture that she delivered at King's College about the jobs of women. Thank you very much.